So yesterday we were talking about sedimentary rocks and we're taking them day by day. So yesterday we talked about sandstone. Today we'll talk about shale and tomorrow we'll talk about limestone. So what we're focusing on is how these specific rocks that we know exist at the Grand Canyon form. So let's start with a review about yesterday's. Looking at our Grand Canyon correlation map, which we've worked with a couple of times now, we know that the two sandstone layers are Coconino and Supai. And those are the two sandstone layers, and you can see them right here with the orange and black speckles. Those are the two sandstone ones. Our blue squares are limestone, and our gray squares are shale. Okay, so looking at this, we know that sandstone was something that we found at the Grand Canyon. And in order to produce sandstone, in order to make it, the sand would have had to been eroded from rocks like granite, transported by water or wind, and deposited in a basin. That's that low-lying body of water that over time turned into a rock when those sand pieces were cemented together. So that's the process of sandstone. So we're going to discuss today another Grand Canyon rock, shale. This was rock number 7, if you remember, and it was one of my favorite rocks, my favorite rock out of that group. So thinking about what we know about how sandstone forms together, the weathering of a rock to make small pieces of sediments, those sediments traveling through erosion and getting even smaller along the way sometimes, and then being cemented together over time with groundwater in order to create sandstone. So let's do a compare and contrast. We have our circle here for things about sandstone that only have to do with sandstone, things that only have to do with shale, and things that have to do with both sandstone and shale. So we have our two pictures of sandstone over here, all right? And we know that sandstone, when we hold it in our hands, it's rough, it's scratchy, it's like sandpaper, it's like grip tape on a skateboard. It has a specific feeling to it. And you know it's made up out of sand, that's why it's called sandstone. And it's lighter colored. It's got maybe a red to it, a tan to it, because it's the color of sand. Where shale, on the other hand, and this is shale, and here's another picture as well, this one with a fossil in it. Shale was smooth. Shale had those really thin layers building up on one another, and it had that dark color, and it was very, very smooth. It was almost soft. And sometimes we could find fossils in our shale rocks as well. And it must be made out of particles too small to see. We know sand is pretty small, and we can see the sand in sandstone. We know shale is a sedimentary rock, which means it's made up out of sediments. So those sediments just must be too small to see if I can't see them or feel them when I'm holding shale. So again, shale is a sedimentary rock, and sedimentary rocks are made out of sediments. That's where the name comes from. Just like sandstone, which is made out of sand, which is a sediment. So those sediments are glued together some way through cementation, we talked about, through groundwater. So if shale is made out of sediments, what kind of particles can make up something as smooth as shale? I can't think of any sediments off the top of my head that I know of that could make something as smooth as shale. I wonder what they could be. So let's take a look. This scale over here, I showed it yesterday as well, it's called the Wentworth scale. And the Wentworth scale talks about particle sizes. So we know that sandstone is made out of sand, and we have very coarse sand here. We have medium sand, and we have fine and very fine sand here. So those are the particles that will make up sandstone. But if I can't feel the particles that make up shale, that must mean that those particles are smaller than sand. If they were bigger, I'd be able to feel them even more. I'd be able to see them even more. But they must be smaller because I can't feel them and I can't see them. They're hiding. They're very small. So they must be one of these two sediments on our Wentworth scale. So there's only two that could possibly be any smaller than sand. I wonder if you know what they are. It's clay and silt. So right here we have a picture of sand, silt, and clay. And you can kind of understand and see the difference in each of those sediments right here in this picture. But let's go a little bit deeper with this video.
When gardening, soil is the single most important variable to consider. Soil is valuable for a number of reasons: absorbing and retaining water, as a source of nutrients, as an anchor for the plant, and as a home to a myriad of visible and invisible forms of life. When classified by texture, there are three main types of soil: sandy, silt, clay, and the ideal mix, an equal combination of sand, silt, and clay, which is called loam. First, let's take a closer look at the three main types of soil texture. This is sand soil. Made up of larger granules, when wet, it won't hold shape at all. Silt soil is made up of medium-sized granules. When picked up, it has a floury, dry feel. When wet, it cannot hold shape well. Clay soil is very fine. It makes a hard crust after rain and holds its shape when wet. Now, let's look at how the three types absorb water. After 1 minute, our three types of soil have reacted very differently. Sand has almost completely absorbed the water. Silt has absorbed water, but significantly slower than sand. Clay is the slowest to absorb. Nearly all the water remains on.
Almost all the water remains still at the top, and that has to do with the size of the particles. So we know that because the particles are so small, that means they're closer together. So it's harder for that water to get in between those particles. Particles of sand are much bigger. There's more space, more air between them for water to go through, which is why the water absorbed more in the sand. We get a little bit smaller into silt and it absorbed just a little less. And we got to even smaller, the smallest particle, and the water absorbed even less, barely even absorbing at all. It's going to take a lot of time for water on that clay to absorb in. So let's stop and let's think. So my first question to you, thinking about what we know about rocks, about erosion, about physical and chemical weathering, how do you think, or what may happen in order to make a particle the size of silt? Silt's very tiny. We know that pebbles and gravel and sand come from physical weathering, chemical weathering, through erosion. But those are much bigger particles. What do you think has to happen in order to get something the size of silt? So here's the answer. A rock would have to get weathered quite a bit. I hope that's what you said, that it would need just a little bit extra weathering in order to break down to an even smaller size. So either through physical weathering of smashing into smaller and smaller pieces through abrasion, maybe cracked by ice over and over again until it got that small, or maybe through acid rain, through weathered chemically until it became one of the smallest sizes, silt. Also, the particle we talked about, the rocks being eroded and weathered through a river, maybe the particles were transported a very long way and weathered for a very long time in order to be so tiny. So here's my second question. Thinking about erosion and deposition. Erosion takes it, and deposition drops it off. Would you expect to find particles the size of silt and clay? Remember, they're really small, they're really light. Closest to the shore or farther into the basin? Like I said, silt and clay are small, light particles, so I would expect to find them farther into the basin. Silt-sized particles, because they're so small, they're deposited only when the water stops moving. So as long as that water is going along, those really tiny particles are going to stay with the water. And then finally, when the water stops and the particles settle, that's when they start to combine together. So geologists think that in order to form shale, deposits of clay and silt harden into a rock when we can get the water out and cementation occurs. So we looked at that video of water and sand and water and silt and water and clay. But how do you think, or what are some ways you think we can remove that water from the clay and the silt? Well, there are two ways. We talked about this yesterday as well. It's something called compaction. So when something is becoming compact, it's being squeezed together and all the air, all the space between the particles is getting pushed out. Think about if you go to your trash can right now and you step on it. You're going to make more room in the trash can because all the air between the particles in your trash, all the little bits of trash you have in there, gets smushed down. Everything gets combined together, gets compacted. And then you have a little bit more room, and that's all smushed together at the bottom nice and tight. And then there's cementation. We talked about in sandstone using groundwater to cement particles of rock together. But because clay is so small, you could actually use clay to cement larger sediments, larger particles together like silt and fine sand. So you can get water out from between the clay and the silt particles by either squeezing it out through compaction or by just using that clay as the cement. So let's take a peek at some shale formation. It has no sound. So we're underwater and we're watching layers build up over millions of years. A leaf falls into our layers of clay and silt. And if you watch the leaf, you can see it get smushed, get compacted down, the space leaving between the other layers. Now let's take a look up close at the particles. The dark brown spots or the really light spots are the particles of clay and silt, and that middle color is all the space between them. And as millions of years go by and the pressure starts building from above, it gets compacted down and the space between those particles starts to melt away. And now we have really close together particles that don't have much space in between them at all. So now that we reviewed our sandstone and we've introduced how shale is made, I want you to do a quick activity. It's attached to your Google Classroom assignment today. It's 10 questions. You don't have to type anything. All you have to do is highlight the correct answer. Here are modern sedimentary environments. These are the places today that sedimentary rocks can be made. So looking at the pictures and looking at the names of them, which are typed out for you, I know it's hard to read here. Do you think shale or sandstone would be made in these environments? Keep in mind what sandstone is made out of and what shale is made out of and how we can get those particles to stop and settle. So all you're going to do is go in and highlight whether you think it's sandstone or shale. Right, that's it, just highlighting or underlining or however you want to mark off which one you choose. So I hope this was helpful in helping you understand the formation of shale. All this is very important information and it will be on next week's test. So I wanted to be able to go over this with you in depth and really explain it. So I'll probably be doing that same thing tomorrow with a limestone introduction for you about how limestone is made. I hope you have a great rest of your day. If you need any help, please private comment, email me, Google Hangouts, whatever you need, I'm here to help you out.